I came home dead tired after a 12-hour shift, my construction boots still caked with mud as I dragged myself through our apartment door. Instead of Megan's usual welcome, the silence hit me first. Then I saw it. A handwritten note on our kitchen counter, carefully placed where I couldn't miss it. I picked it up, my calloused fingers trembling slightly as I read the first devastating line. My parents think you're worthless. I'm taking a break. Despite the sudden hollowness in my chest, a strange calm washed over me. I found a pen, wrote one word beneath her paragraph. Understood. That single word would change everything. Before I share how I turned this heartbreak into the best decision of my life, let me know where you're watching from and hit subscribe if you've ever had to rebuild after someone gave up on you. I never thought I'd be the guy with the one that got away story. Except in my case, I'm thankful she left. I'm Carl, 32 years old, and 4 years ago, I thought I'd found my forever person. I was wrong in ways I couldn't imagine. I met Megan at my buddy's backyard barbecue during Memorial Day weekend. She stood out immediately with her confident laugh and the way she actually listened when people spoke. Unlike me with my community college background and construction career, Megan came from money and education. She had an MBA from a prestigious university and worked as a marketing executive at one of those firms with a fancy downtown office and catered lunches. The attraction was immediate and surprising. We connected over a shared love of true crime podcasts and hiking trails that most tourists never discovered. Our first date lasted 6 hours, starting with coffee and ending with stargazing from the hood of my truck. What I initially thought was a temporary fascination blossomed into something that felt unshakable. We balance each other, she used to say, her head resting on my shoulder during our Netflix nights. You keep me grounded, and I help you see bigger possibilities. After 2 years of dating, I proposed during a sunrise hike to her favorite mountain lookout. I'd saved for 8 months to buy a ring that wouldn't embarrass her, 1.5 carats set in white gold that cost me nearly 3 months' salary. When she said yes, her eyes filling with tears, I believed I'd won the relationship lottery. The wedding planning began immediately. Megan created Pinterest boards and spreadsheets scheduling venue tours during my precious weekends off. We opened a joint wedding fund account where we both deposited money regularly. By the time everything fell apart, we had $42,000 saved, $25,000 of which came directly from my overtime shifts and side jobs renovating bathrooms for extra cash. The first hairline fractures appeared during Thanksgiving dinner with her parents. The Hamiltons lived in a gated community with a view of the lake and a house that could fit my childhood home 4 times over. Mr. Hamilton was an investment banker, and Mrs. Hamilton ran a charitable foundation that seemed to host galas more often than actually helping people. So Carl, Mr. Hamilton said, swirling his whiskey as we sat in leather armchairs that probably cost more than my truck. Megan tells us, "You're in construction." The way he said it made it sound like I collected garbage for a living. Not that there's anything wrong with sanitation work, but his tone dripped with judgment. "Yes, sir. I'm a foreman now, managing crews for commercial projects. We just finished the new community center downtown." No interest in going back to school. I know some people who could help you get into business. Something more suitable. Megan jumped in, her voice artificially bright. Dad Carl is amazing at what he does. He was promoted twice last year. Mrs. Hamilton patted her daughter's hand. "Of course, dear. Everyone has their place." I gritted my teeth through the rest of the weekend, chalking it up to generational differences. But after that visit, something shifted in Megan. Small criticisms began to surface. "Maybe don't use that expression in front of my colleagues next week," she'd say, after I mentioned something being hella good. "Could you wear the shirt I bought you instead of that one?" became a common request before we met her friends. I started noticing how she would subtly reshape my stories when we were in company, editing out references to my job or upgrading my role to project manager instead of foreman. She once interrupted me to clarify that my company was a construction engineering firm rather than just a construction company. Still, I was committed. I worked 60-hour weeks to save for our wedding and future home down payment. Meanwhile, Megan became increasingly obsessed with creating the perfect wedding that would impress her college friends and family connections. Our guest list ballooned from 100 to 250 people, most of whom I'd never met. "Do we really need to invite your father's golf buddies?" I asked one night. "They're important business connections," she replied, without looking up from her laptop. "Besides, they'll probably give generous gifts." The venue changed 3 times each, more expensive than the last. The catering quotes made me physically ill when I thought about how many hours of labor they represented. 2 weeks before she left, we had an argument about postponing our honeymoon to Bali because Megan was up for a promotion that would require her immediate attention after the wedding. "We can go at Christmas instead," she said already, typing an email declining our original reservations. "But we've been planning this for a year." I countered, frustrated that once again her career took precedence over our relationship. "I've already arranged the time off. It's not easy to reschedule construction projects." She looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before, something between pity and contempt. "Well, my career has different demands than yours," she said. "Sometimes I need to be flexible for bigger opportunities." The comment stung more than she knew. It crystallized the growing suspicion that Megan was embarrassed by me, by my job, by my lack of advanced degrees or family connections. The day before she left her note, I overheard her on the phone with her mother. "I know, Mom. Yes, I understand what Dad is saying. Of course I deserve. It's complicated. I need to think." When she saw me standing in the doorway, she quickly ended the call and suggested we order takeout. That night she barely spoke, going to bed early with the excuse of a headache. The next morning she left before I woke up. And when I returned home that evening, all that awaited me was her note. The note sat in my hands, feeling heavier than the concrete bags I lift at work. I read it again, letting each word sink in like a physical blow. "Carl, I need to be honest with you. My parents think you're worthless, and after reflecting deeply, I'm starting to see their concerns. We come from different worlds, and I'm not sure those worlds can truly merge. I'm taking a break to reevaluate our compatibility and whether our life trajectories make sense together. Mom and Dad have offered to help me find someone more suitable, someone who can give me the life I was raised to expect. I've moved back to my parents' estate temporarily. Please don't contact me for a while. I need space to think. Megan." My first reaction wasn't anger or even sadness. It was a strange, floating numbness, like I was watching someone else's life fall apart. I picked up a pen, wrote, "Understood" at the bottom of her note, and set it back on the counter. Then I walked to our refrigerator, grabbed a beer, and sat on our couch staring at nothing for 3 straight hours. That night was the longest of my life. Our apartment felt both empty and suffocating. Wedding magazines mocked me from the coffee table. Save the date cards we hadn't yet mailed sat in neat stacks on the dining table. Her scent lingered on the throw pillows she'd insisted we needed. I noticed she'd taken only her designer clothes and expensive jewelry. Her everyday items remained as if she expected to come back for them later. Or perhaps those things, like me, weren't worth bringing into her elevated future. The next morning, my best friend James came over after I texted him. He brought breakfast burritos and coffee, setting them on the counter without commenting on the note still sitting there. "You okay, man?" he asked, knowing the answer. "Not really." Did you know? James looked down, his expression confirming what I suspected. "Not everything. But I heard something at Patrick and Sarah's engagement party last month." My stomach tightened. "Tell me." He sighed. "I overheard Megan talking to Sarah's sister in the kitchen." She was saying that her parents were helping her upgrade from you, that they'd introduced her to some hotshot lawyer from their country club. He rubbed his face. "I should have told you, but I thought maybe I misunderstood, or that she was just blowing off steam. I'm sorry, man." The confirmation was both devastating and clarifying. It turned my confusion into cold clarity. This wasn't a sudden decision. This was planned. After James left, I began searching for evidence of what I now suspected was a pattern of deception. I found it quickly in text messages where Megan complained about me to her friends in credit card statements, showing lunches with names I didn't recognize, and finally in a journal she'd forgotten in her bedside drawer. Mom says I'm settling with Carl, one entry read from 6 months earlier. Maybe she's right, but he's safe and devoted. I can always make a change later if someone better comes along. Those words cut deeper than any knife. 5 years of what I thought was building a life together had apparently been a temporary arrangement for her. A placeholder relationship until something better materialized. I spent that night on our balcony watching the city lights and contemplating how conditional our relationship had always been. By morning, I knew exactly what I needed to do. If Megan's commitment was conditional, my response would be equally calculated and permanent. The next morning I called in sick for the first time in 3 years. This situation required my full attention, and I was determined to handle it with the same precision I used when planning complex construction projects. My first call was to my friend Derek, who worked as a paralegal at a family law firm. Over coffee, he confirmed what I suspected about engagement assets. Legally, engagement isn't marriage, he explained. Joint accounts are still accessible to both parties. The ring is technically a conditional gift that would traditionally be returned. As for your wedding fund, without specific legal documentation stating otherwise, you're entitled to withdraw what you contributed. Armed with this knowledge, I gathered all my bank statements documenting every transfer I'd made to our wedding fund over the past 2 years. $25,000 of honest work saved dollar by dollar for a future that no longer existed. At the bank, the manager reviewed my documentation sympathetically. "I can help you withdraw your documented contribution, Mr. Stevens," she said. "Would you like a cashier's check or a transfer to your personal account?" "Transfer, please," I replied, providing my individual account information. With that transaction, I reclaimed my financial independence. The next steps were equally methodical. I contacted every wedding vendor, removing my name from contracts and informing them that any further arrangements would be solely Megan's responsibility. Some required cancellation fees, which I paid from my withdrawn funds. At our apartment, I packed only what I had brought into the relationship and family heirlooms that had sentimental value. My grandfather's fishing tackle box, the quilt my mother made me for college, tools I'd collected over years of hard work. Everything else, including gifts we'd exchanged during our relationship, I left behind. While sorting through my belongings, my phone buzzed with messages from mutual friends, asking about rumors they'd heard. I ignored them all. This wasn't a public spectacle. It was a private reclamation of my dignity. That afternoon, my former colleague Ryan called with news that would accelerate my plans. "Remember that mountain development project in Colorado I mentioned last year? The position is open again. Project manager, 15% raise, housing allowance for the first 3 months. If you want it, say the word." It felt like the universe offering an escape hatch. I want it. When do they need me? 2 weeks soon enough. Perfect. That evening I sent Megan a text message. Note received. Engagement terminated. All the best in your future endeavors. Then I turned off my phone, knowing the storm that would follow. For the next 3 days, I stayed with James while finalizing my exit strategy. I researched certification courses that would enhance my value in the construction industry, allocating $8,000 of my reclaimed funds to professional development. The remaining money would fund my relocation and serve as a safety net during my transition. When I finally turned my phone back on, there were 27 missed calls and 43 text messages. Most were from Megan, starting with confusion, escalating to anger, and finally descending into panic when she discovered the depleted wedding fund. "You stole our wedding money." Her most recent text screamed in all caps. I replied calmly, "I withdrew my documented contribution of $25,000, leaving your $17,000 intact. This isn't theft, it's financial disentanglement." Minutes later, my phone rang. I answered, holding the device away from my ear as Megan's voice filled the room. "How could you do this? That money was for our wedding. The wedding you canceled when you decided I was worthless and needed an upgrade." I responded, surprised by my own steadiness. "I'm simply honoring your decision to take a break by making it permanent." I never said permanent. I just needed time to think. And I needed to protect myself. Funny how that works. The conversation continued with Megan threatening legal action, then switching to tearful pleas, neither of which moved me. I agreed to meet her once at a neutral location to formally end our relationship face to face. We met at a coffee shop downtown, a place we had no history together. She arrived looking immaculate as always, though her reddened eyes betrayed recent tears. I arrived early, selecting a table in clear view of other patrons. "You look different," she said as she sat down. "I am different." I placed a small box on the table between us. Inside was her engagement ring. "I believe this belongs to you now," I said, "since the condition of marriage will not be fulfilled." She stared at the box, then at me. "You're really ending everything over one note. 5 years together, and you're walking away because I needed space to think." "No, Megan. I'm walking away because I finally saw the truth. You never valued me. I was a stepping stone, a placeholder until someone your parents approved of came along." I leaned forward slightly. "I deserve better than conditional love, based on my occupation or income bracket." "So do you, honestly." Her expression shifted from incredulity to calculation. "We can work through this. Maybe I overreacted to my parents' pressure. We can postpone the wedding, go to counseling." "There's nothing to work through," I replied, standing up. "Your note wasn't the problem, Megan. It was the symptom. The problem was that you were ashamed of me all along." As I walked toward the door, she called after me. "What about the apartment? The furniture we bought together?" I turned back one last time. "Consider it the price of my dignity. Enjoy your break, Megan. I'm making it permanent." Walking out of that coffee shop felt like shedding a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying. For the first time in years, I was making decisions based solely on my own worth, rather than someone else's assessment of my value. 6 months later, I stood on the balcony of my rented cabin in Colorado, watching the sun rise over mountains that still took my breath away every morning. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of pine and possibilities. My new position with the construction management firm had exceeded expectations. The leadership team valued my hands-on knowledge and perspective, promoting me to senior project manager after I completed my certification courses. I was now overseeing 3 residential developments, earning more than I ever had in the city, and building a reputation based on skill rather than credentials. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah, whose engagement party had revealed the first concrete evidence of Megan's betrayal. We had maintained a cautious friendship despite her connection to my ex. "Thought you should know," her message read. "Ran into Megan's cousin at a work function. Apparently the lawyer guy lasted all of 3 weeks. Her parents are being sued by the wedding venue and caterer for breach of contract. Karma has entered the chat." I set the phone down without responding. The news didn't bring the satisfaction I might have expected months ago. Instead, I felt a strange compassion mixed with gratitude that I had escaped a life where my worth would always be measured by standards I had no interest in meeting. In this mountain community, people valued competence and character. My neighbors included retired executives and skilled tradespeople, all treated with equal respect. At community gatherings, conversations revolved around shared interests, rather than status symbols. I had begun a casual relationship with Emma, an architectural engineer who consulted on one of my projects. She appreciated my craftsmanship and practical knowledge, often asking my opinion on structural decisions rather than deferring to theoretical models. When I told her about my past, she simply said, "Her loss, my potential gain," and changed the subject. The greatest change wasn't external, but internal. I no longer measured my worth through someone else's eyes. My value wasn't determined by my occupation, education, or income, but by my integrity, work ethic, and how I treated others. 1 year after finding that note, I received an industry award for innovative construction management on the mountain development project. The irony wasn't lost on me that my supposedly dead-end career had blossomed once freed from Megan's narrow expectations. With some of my savings, I established a small scholarship for trade school students from backgrounds similar to mine, hoping to validate career paths often dismissed by those who equate worth with degrees. Looking back, that devastating note became the most valuable gift Megan could have given me. It forced me to confront the inequality in our relationship and freed me to build a life aligned with my authentic self. What I initially perceived as rejection became my redirection. The break she demanded became the breaking of chains I hadn't recognized were binding me, and the word worthless became a catalyst for discovering my true value. Sometimes in life, the most powerful response to those who underestimate you isn't an argument or revenge, but simply the word understood, followed by actions that transform your life. Not to prove them wrong, but to prove yourself right. Has someone's rejection ever turned into your redirection towards something better? Share your experience in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories about turning life's lowest moments into launching pads for success. Hit that share button if you know someone who needs to be reminded of their worth today. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that sometimes the best response to "I'm taking a break" is breaking free completely.